Hello and welcome back to another opposition preview here on the Last Word on Spurs. Thank you so much for joining us. Big game ahead for Tottenham Hotspur. A bit of a glamour fixture. We always say this one is Tottenham Hotspur up against Manchester United at Old Trafford. It's a typical hunting ground for us, which hasn't always really been the most kindest of places. I'm delighted to say I've got Joe from the Stretford Padock joining us. Joe, how are you firstly?
I'm good, thank you, mate. How are you doing?
Yeah, not bad at all. I've got to be honest, Joe, every time Man United away comes on the fixture list, it's one that despite whoever's managing your football club, it's a place where we seem to go with real trepidation. And I don't know why, because I think United, all those years ago with Sir Alex, it's definitely a different ground to go to than obviously what it is at the moment. But having said that, of course, always seems to be a tricky fixture for Tottenham to navigate. Just first and foremost, before we get into it, Joe, thoughts on United's season overall under a new manager?
I think it's definitely signs of improvement from United. You look around the top six, and obviously Chelsea have just replaced their manager. But other than that, all of the teams that are going for the top six and top four positions have got managers that have been there for a while now. Like obviously Liverpool and Klopp, City and Pep, they're almost, City are on another level to everyone else. But Arteta's been there. I think this is his fourth season now. Conte, this is his second season now. Like I said, Chelsea are in flux a little bit, but obviously they're struggling a little bit as well. It just feels like, considering that United are the only team with a brand new manager this season, I'm quite happy with how things are going so far. I think we're seeing signs of a different system. I think we're seeing the players buying in and trying hard and actually putting effort in, which is, maybe as a Tottenham fan, you'll have seen similar problems before Conte came in that he's now changed. Where half the time you watch the team, you think, do they even care? I don't think that with Manchester United anymore. And I think, the results are still a bit up and down, but that's what you expect from the first season with a new manager with sort of radically different tactics. So yeah, I wouldn't say I'm impressed, but I'm definitely spirited, and I feel as though things are moving in the right direction.
Okay, well, I'm always fascinated to know, Joe, what other fans think of Spurs' season. So intrigued from you from the outside looking in, bearing in mind United, it was at a point where yourselves were considering Antonio Conte. And obviously that game classed as El Satico now, a number of years ago, of course, where obviously it was the battle of the two managers of Nuno and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, where Spurs ended up losing to United on the day. And in a weird way, Spurs almost felt like they come away winning that game because Nuno left the club and subsequently Conte come in. I'm just wondering for you from the outside, what have you made of Conte's arrival at Tottenham? What have you made of the difference he's made to the football club as things stand?
From the outside looking in, it's a tricky one, really, because Conte is almost the sort of the 2010s Jose Mourinho, isn't he? Where he comes into teams, the 2010s equivalent of the 2000s Jose Mourinho, to be clear. He comes into teams, he brings a defensive, hard-working style of play, counter-attack focused, stop the opposition play before we focus on anything else. And typically, he wins trophies and he wins titles, and he's been very successful. From the outside looking in, Tottenham and Conte mostly, they're exactly what we expected. A little bit boring, maybe. Is that too harsh to say? I'm not sure. But, decent counterattacks, very well drilled, a team that follow the instructions of the manager to a T. But those instructions maybe seem slightly dated. I know that's harsh to say, maybe, and you'll prove me wrong if he starts winning tons of trophies. But sometimes I look at Conte and I think, You're kind of the last of that style of manager where you go into games and let the opposition control them in big games and still want to win. I feel like there's not many people doing that anymore. The top teams who stay at the top control the game first, and the only way they really can see chances is by relinquishing that control or making mistakes. Conte is the opposite. He feels like Jose Mourinho to me. Again, he's very successful. He's a great manager. I think he's improved Tottenham massively. But I always have those question marks where I think, how long can this last playing this system and this style?
It's interesting you obviously said that, Joe, because obviously we've gone through both in terms of now Mourinho and Conte. Likewise, obviously yourselves with Mourinho. I will just say with Conte, I do find him a little bit more adaptable to some degree. I mean, similar to Mourinho, he is quite stubborn with his team, and therefore you will find that he has his favourites. I mean, I think this season, bearing in mind in the summer, there was a real push to bring in players early. I think a lot of fans have been quite surprised by the lack of real changes that he has made to the starting 11. He's picked the same 12, 13, 14 players. Doesn't really go outside of that. We yet to see Jed Spence when he get given a chance in the Spurs shirt. Yves Bissouma similar as well. So I think, again, this is really, really interesting to see how far Spurs have come, because last season, of course, at Old Trafford, it was a Ronaldo masterclass which outdone us on the day. Yeah. And I think Spurs going into that game, although they scored twice, never really felt like they were in control at Old Trafford. And it was almost like, say, Ronaldo versus Spurs on the day. And again, having a player like that in your squad, although I know he's been getting limited game time this season, I think it'll be interesting to see obviously how United do line up and how they obviously approach the game against Spurs. Bearing in mind, of course, you come off the back of a 0-0 against Newcastle. I just wonder for you, Joe, does it benefit going on the back of a 0-0 in terms of the fact that with regards to Spurs, they may have to approach that game slightly differently, or do you think they'll take confidence from the fact that United failed to score at the weekend against Newcastle?
Well, I don't know actually, because it was an interesting 0-0 really, because I think Newcastle sat back a lot more than I was expecting them to. First half, they seemed to try and sort of engage United, meet us halfway a little bit. But second half, it was almost all United. Newcastle time wasting and taking ages on free kicks and all these sorts of tactics where I thought Newcastle were meant to be a bit better than this now. I think, I'm not saying that Tottenham will do the same thing because, Conte is a much better manager than Eddie Howe is, and he's got much better players and he's been a very successful manager. But I almost think that the systems and styles won't be that different, where there'll be a lot of United attacking, a lot of Tottenham defending and trying to counter-attack, which they are obviously brilliant at. You've got some great counter-attacking players. But I think that the Newcastle game was almost decent preparation for Tottenham, like a sort of stepping stone up to Tottenham. Not that dissimilar in style. I know Newcastle try and control the games more, but they didn't against United. But obviously Tottenham are a better version of that with better players, better manager, all that sort of thing. So I think it was almost a pretty good warm-up really for Tottenham.
I'm just intrigued to know from you, Joe, how patient the crowd will be. Bearing in mind, obviously, you're coming off the back of a draw and Spurs are coming. Is there that emphasis where that Old Trafford crowd are coming expectant to beat Tottenham? What do you get the feeling of going into this one?
I think, and I hate to say this because this obviously plays no role in whether we beat you or not, there does tend to typically be an expectation of beating Tottenham at Old Trafford. And I think you may feel that as well, that the whole lads, it's Tottenham meme was spawned from this fixture, and I think that's not to say we'll beat you. And you've obviously, 6-1 last season or the season before last.
That's right,
so you're more than capable of beating Manchester United or getting a result. But it feels like one of those ones for the fans where you go, Tottenham are, like we've got Chelsea on Saturday, for instance. And again, it almost feels like there's another step in, like we've got Tottenham who I know that you're doing better than Chelsea. But for whatever reason, they just feel like a beatable team still. And maybe that's the thing that Conte has brought more than anything else, because you are more difficult to beat now. But again, like watching the North London derby a few weeks ago, there was still just signs of, is it still the same old Tottenham? And I think obviously you've got a long way to go to win the league or anything like that, like Conte tends to do. But maybe you are a better team now than you have been. But for whatever reason, like I said, Tottenham at Old Trafford feels like one where you go, right, we can get into these.
Yeah. It's a hard question, this next one to ask. I feel like United got so many talented players across the park, even though at the moment we get to see them really gel as a side. But who are going to be the danger men Spurs need to watch out for on Wednesday evening, in your opinion?
Assuming he plays Christian Eriksen, who obviously you will know very well as a Tottenham player how dangerous he can be, and
unbelievable player.
Not quite the same player he was when he was with you. Not as he used to play number 10 and off the left hand side occasionally for Tottenham. Plays a bit deeper now, number 6, number 8 role, kind of orchestrating from deep. But he's been so instrumental to almost all of the good controlled performances United have had this season. Didn't play against Newcastle. We seem to lack that finishing touch in attack. Replacing him with Fred just didn't do the same work. And I think Rashford as well may not quite work, depending on how Tottenham play. If they come and try and fight and meet us halfway, like I said, then I think get Rashford in behind is always a danger. And I think he scored a goal, clipped over the top against Tottenham a few years ago, didn't he? Sort of dragging it across the goalkeeper at Old Trafford. I think it was Old Trafford. I think Rashford will be crucial for us because one weakness. We've got plenty of weaknesses still. We've dropped points, but the main weakness at the moment is United's front line, and Rashford is the only one that, even though he's missing chances, is able to create chances consistently for himself. So I think Eriksen and Rashford will be the two danger men.
Okay, you've kind of answered my question in two there. You've given me the weakness as well, Joe. I suppose let's go straight to prediction. What do you think? What's your gut telling you on this one on Wednesday night?
It's hard because I know that Tottenham are definitely improved. You're much more difficult to beat now than you have been in especially sort of post-Poch era. But I think I've got to fancy United. Like I said, it just seems to be one of those fixtures where United can sort of scrape something together, and not to be too cocky because we're more than capable of losing, like I said. But I'm a United fan. I'm going to predict a 2-1 win.
Okay, fantastic. Joe, thank you so much. Where can everybody check out any United content they might be interested in duck their head into?
Check out the Stretford Padock YouTube channel. Ideally, please, that'd be great.
Amazing. Well, guys, we are back with you on Wednesday evening for instant post-match reaction to hopefully Joe being wrong and last word on Spurs celebrating a Tottenham Hotspur win up at Old Trafford. Thank you so much as always for all your support. And as always, come on you Spurs.